everyone, and welcome to Life Mastery TV, your source for inspiration, empowerment, and fulfillment. My name is David McLeod. I am your Life Mastery coach and author of the book, A Life to Die For. Today, we are embarking on episode number 162. Our topic today is characteristics of emotional mastery. I'd like to remind everyone here that this is a live presentation, so feel free to participate by posting comments and questions and whatever you have into the chat area on your left. And we will do our best to respond to those, answering questions or whatever you have. And we'll just keep the conversation going from there. So don't be afraid to share your perspective as we proceed. So why don't we just get started? Emotions are strange things that most of us don't really understand too well, I don't think. Even science struggles to fully understand emotions, since in some ways they seem to originate in the brain, but they manifest significantly in the body as well. One thing is certain, emotions can have a major impact in our lives, especially if we fail to channel their considerable energy in appropriate directions. Western society has long tried to get people to feel less and to reason more, under the belief that this approach leads to progress. But it seems fair to say that people who think without experiencing and expressing their emotions contribute to a lot of ideas that don't necessarily serve humanity all that well. So we're left to wonder if there might be a solution. Well, thankfully, we have people like today's guest, a highly trained psychotherapist with a lot of experience helping people, including herself, to deal with challenging emotions, to bring some wisdom to this conversation. And I have invited her back to Life Mastery TV to share some of her wisdom, specifically in the area of emotional mastery. Known as the Emotional Pro, my guest is an international speaker, workshop leader, coach, and author. Her book, Emotions in Motion, Mastering Life's Built-in Navigation System, was published in 2019. And she's already working on a second book called Outgrowing Psychological Manipulation. And it's currently in the publication phase. And I can say that she's also been very busy co-authoring a book with me called The Wellness Universe Complete Guide to Self-Care, which was just released last week on November 11th. And you can pick up a copy of that over at Amazon if you like. It's already an international bestseller in multiple categories. So please join me in welcoming Ilene Dillon back to our show today. Welcome, Ilene. It's great to have you back on Life Mastery TV. I think it's just been way too long.
Thank you. Yes, it has been a while. And thank you for co-writing that book with me. That was a very exciting, wonderful process. And let me just plug that anybody who's interested in self-care or has people who are not caring as well for themselves right now as they could, that is a fabulous book. It's a wonderful gift to give to people. Do you have a copy of it? I've never got mine yet.
I have not received my author copies yet. I'm still waiting for those to arrive.
Me too.
Right,
but it's beautiful.
I saw today that the price, the $1.99 price for the Kindle book is going to expire today. So if you're interested in picking up a copy for yourself, head over to Amazon and look for that book. It's called The Wellness Universe Complete Guide to Self-Care, or maybe it's the Guide to Complete Self-Care.
Isn't that confusing? I have that too.
And it's 25 tools for stress management, stress relief. So yeah, I agree, Ilene. It was just a blast to write that book. And I honestly never imagined myself being a best-selling author. It's not something that I aspire to. I just write because I want to share my heart with people.
Me too.
Yeah.
Me too. Yeah. And so, but it felt good. I have to admit, I'm really excited about that. And international bestseller in, I think, 11 categories or something like that.
Yeah,
it was
that's
amazing.
pretty amazing.
Yeah.
So one of the things that I've heard you talk about in different areas that I've seen you present, one of the things that you have mentioned is that you are a recovered angry person.
You got it.
I know that has a big part of how you ended up on this path, but I was wondering if you could share a little bit about that part of your story so we can understand more. Because I mean, anger is a really strong emotion, and it's sometimes difficult for people to deal with. So I'd like to know a little bit about, first of all, what was that really about, being an angry person? And secondly, how did you heal that to the point where you have become the emotional pro?
Yes, I am delighted to talk about this. I had a miserable childhood, is how it starts out. Lost my birth mother when I was 2, was put in boarding schools, traveled around the world with my military family, which had some abuse in it, et cetera, et cetera. And in those circumstances, way back when, children were supposed to be seen and not heard. They weren't supposed to express their emotions. Nobody talked to them about, like when I was taken away from my birth mother before I was 3. Nobody said anything to me about this must be difficult for you or whatever. This man I'd never seen before, my father had been off in the war, suddenly showed up and took me away, right? And so what happens when you hold on, you keep emotions inside of you, David, as I'm sure you know, is they grow, right? So my entire life, if I tried to speak up, my father might spank or slap or attempt to control. So basically, I still have a stiff upper lip here. I learned to hold on to those emotions, and they grew. And like you said, anger is a very powerful emotion. It's our most active emotion. And so it grew inside of me, and I wasn't even aware of it. Most people are not aware of it. Now I can look back and see there was sarcasm, there was cursing, there were signs, there was me saying inappropriate things and not being able to tell that I was saying them even, cutting things to people. And I didn't even know it. And then I married quite young, and my husband and I waited 8 years. We had a child together that we consciously conceived. And when she was 10 months old, he came home one day and said, "I'm not ready to be a father. I'm leaving." Right?
Wow.
Well, guess what that did for me? That pulled the cork right out of all that anger, right? And it all came. I was so furious with him for creating the child with me. I said, "What do you want me to do? Send her back?"
Yeah.
So I was really angry with him. And the only person who was around me was my little child. And all that anger, once it starts coming, it's like a flood. It's like a dam bursts, and it just knocks everything out in all directions. And so I saw that happening, and I went, "Oh no, I don't want this to happen to my child. I just don't want to do it." So I went back to the University of California, Berkeley School of Social Welfare Library. That's where I had gotten my degree. And I worked with the reference librarian, and I was asking questions like, what causes us to be angry? Why do we have emotions? Why are they so intense? Can you get rid of them? What can you do to knock down the intensity? And we looked for several days together. This was in the early 70s. There was no answer. There was no information at that time. It turned out that therapists knew about anger through their own personal therapy or as something that is a part of a mental illness like schizophrenia. You might be angry, right? But I had somebody in my office in 1997 call 37 colleges and universities in California and ask them, "Do you now or have you ever had a standalone course on anger?" Not one of them ever had, or even in 1999 it was, did they have it then, right? So what that meant was that even therapists didn't know squat about specific emotions, right? And yet they were still raging in me. So I determined, okay, let's see what I can do about it because there's nobody here to help me. So I talked with colleagues. I was already a marriage and family therapist. I talked with colleagues. I read. I took spiritual awareness courses, et cetera, et cetera. And I slowly began to get that anger under control. Went to therapy also. Slowly began to get it under my purview. right? And as I did that, and finally did, probably 20 years later, because there were no roadmaps, so it was trial and error. Then I slowly realized that I actually had come up with a way of understanding emotions because I was looking for answers to those questions. Why do we have them? What are they for? How do you work with them?
Right. Wow, that's quite a journey for sure. And I know that there's a lot of parallels with my own journey. And in particular, you talked about having this growing anger within you and not being aware of it. I had exactly that situation happen. I mean, for me, it started when I was about 3 years old, just as it did for you. And I didn't really become fully aware of it until I was in my 40s. So it
Mm-hmm.
took a long time for me. And what it was a very similar situation to you. It was one event that made me realize, oh my God, I got all this anger in me. Now what am I going to do? And
Mm-hmm.
yeah, so my journey took me away from my family, and I ended up coming to California. And as you say, because there may not have been necessarily the tools available to deal with this stuff that were just commonplace. Um, Often we had to figure it out on our own. And the answer that I would often hear, and maybe you heard this too, was, "Oh, buck up, get over it, grow up, stop, whatever."
Count to 10.
Yeah, yeah. Anything that I felt was always bad. It didn't matter whether it was, joy or rambunctiousness, or it didn't matter. It was always bad. Take that outside. Don't want to see it. It, so I totally resonate with what you're saying.
Mm-hmm.
And I'm sad to say that even though we have a lot more tools and a lot more stuff out there to help people, we still have a lot of people who really haven't figured this out and are still struggling with their emotions. And the most dangerous one, I think, that it can be out of control is anger.
Well,
So,
it is because it's our most active and it's most destructive. And what people don't realize is the person that it's most destructive of is our own selves.
correct.
The vessel in which anger is stored is poisoned.
Right.
And so what I began to understand, David, the way that I look at it, I want to just point out that I was not so interested in the theory of emotions as I was in straightening myself out, and not, I was interested in very practical things. And as a therapist, I found when I worked with clients, they wanted to know, what can I do about this too? So I don't have a huge theoretical underpinning to it that I can point to. But I have a system that has, excuse me, has worked for me, and I've helped thousands of people with it. And I like to just outline that briefly, what I discovered. All right.
Let's get into it.
Okay. So what I discovered that works for me and has worked for these thousands of people is that the earth is a school. We have all come to this earth in order to learn and grow. If you don't like school, you may be in a mess. But the way that we learn here is through experiences. So we have an experience. It can be positive or negative. It can be challenging or whatever. But like we just talked about with the anger coming out, we had an experience and something then pushed us. And the purpose of that experience is to offer you the lesson that you need to learn, right? So I needed to learn, and we can get into this later. I needed to learn to stop being so rigid. Rigidity is a big part of anger, rigidity about how you think things are supposed to be, And so I needed that lesson. Now, I have the experience of my husband leaving me, and along comes this enormous amount of anger, which is an emotion, right? Now, emotions, I finally discovered, are given to us as tools to help us do the learning that's involved in our experiences. And the way that works is that each emotion has a message for us. And it's the message. That's why in my book here, whoops, there we go. I say that it helps you to navigate your life. All right. So, what are the messages? There are two messages of anger, which is the only one that I know of that has two messages. One is that a person has an idea of how things are supposed to work in the world, and it's incorrect because it gets violated. And if it were correct, it wouldn't get violated. And so you need to update the messages, update your idea of how things are supposed to be in the world. And the second message is take action, right? So here I have this anger, and I had so much, it took me a while to update, right? But I needed to update and then to take action on things. And what I've learned the action is about with anger is to act on my discomfort. The second that I feel like I might be irritated, I need to take some kind of action. I need to speak up and say, I'm uncomfortable here. I need to say, I need to leave now. I need to do something, take some kind of action. Just like in the movie Network, I'm mad as hell and I'm not going to take it anymore, And so then when I take the action and when I look for what the lesson is, what I'm doing is embracing the learning process. And here's a curious thing, David. People don't like to change, right? So if you had, maybe I had 4 or 5 situations with my husband before he left us those many years ago, where he let me down and I felt angry or irritated, but I didn't do anything about it. I didn't speak up. I didn't ask for change. I didn't leave, nothing, right? And so the lesson has been presented to me. I don't do anything about it, and it kind of disappears. And I think, oh, well, maybe I don't have to deal with that one. But oh no, what it's really doing is coming around. It comes around, and it comes around again, and it comes around again. And every time it comes around, it's a harsher lesson. It's more painful. Right? This is how we get into these patterns of, marrying the same person or going through the same issues over and over again. It's because we haven't learned our lesson, the lesson that's there for us. And so our pain in life has to do with the fact that we're not learning our lessons. We're resisting the lessons, right? The curious and wonderful thing is, the second I turn around and say, okay, I'm learning this lesson, and I learn it, it's over, just like that. I don't have a repetition again. I don't go through it again, right? So that's really key, because we resist looking at what we're angry about, resist looking at our shadow side. But in fact, that is the way through, and the way out is to look.
Yeah, I agree. Yeah, I think you and I, we have similar but not exactly the same understandings of emotions and stuff. I think part of the problem that I see in the world is people mistake this concept of feeling and emotion. Mm-hmm. Feeling is the way I characterize it now. A feeling actually consists of 3 elements, and that is an emotional component, a sensation component, something that happens in the body, and a thought component. They're almost always happening in that triad. Mm-hmm. So that's what a feeling is. So the idea so we tend to conflate the notion of emotion and feeling into the same phrase, and it's not really the case. If you just look at the emotion independently, then there's really only 4 basic emotions, and that's your sadness, fear, anger, and joy. Everything else, all the other words that we come up with are almost always combinations of those words, but we're usually throwing in sensation and thought into the mix. So for example, I might say I feel betrayed. Well, clearly betrayed is not an emotion. It is a thought about what someone else has done to me, and the emotion associated with that might be anger, or it might be sadness, or it might be fear. Who knows?
Or hurt.
There's going to be sensation in there too. Well, even hurt is not really an emotion. That's a physical sensation. See, when you have that Well, you know what it feels like when somebody punches you. You feel the pain in your body. Well, the same thing can happen with emotional hurt. You might feel your heart kind of twitching or something because you're feeling that pain in your heart or the hurt in your heart. The same thing is true if you have like fear, and you might feel that pain or the hurt in your stomach. So this is why this is the way I categorize the concept of feelings. And when I share this with people, they say, wow, that makes a whole lot of sense. Now I can really understand it more easily. And now when I want to build my emotion vocabulary, I can talk strictly about one of those four emotions, and I might categorize it, or I might use an adjective. Like let's say I have a lot of anger. Well, we might use the word rage for that. Or if I have a small amount of anger, I might use the word annoyance or some other word. You see what I'm saying? So we're still talking about the same emotion. We're just talking about a level of intensity.
Yes.
That's really it. So
yeah.
I think that's really important. And the other thing that you said that I wanted to bring back out is this idea of it goes around and it goes around and it goes around. And that's really, really true. If we refuse to pay attention to it, it's going to keep coming back. And sooner or later, the intensity is going to get so big that we're going to say, where the hell did that come from?
Right. And we often look to blame something or say
Right.
that the universe or God has it out for us.
Right.
And it's really our own.
The world is dangerous.
And it's really our own self, right?
That's right.
So the other thing that I've discovered is when you embrace the world as a school and whatever comes up, it's pretty easy to learn the lesson because you become conscious. You have the experience and you ask yourself, what could I possibly be trying to teach myself here? And you look for it. And then
I like that question. Very, very important. So I'm glad you said that. What am I trying to teach myself here? Beautiful.
Right. And so the more you do that and the more you learn lessons and they get finished and you move on, the easier life becomes.
Yeah.
That is the key, because, I have a hard time. The way we talk about emotions lets us know how most people deal with them. We mostly see emotions we consider good are friends, and emotions we consider negative are enemies, right? So we try to get rid of them. We try to crush them. We try to push them away. And the reality is, David, as you probably work with too, there are no negative or positive emotions. Emotions just are. They just are. It'd be like this finger is, I got to remember, I'm backwards here. This finger is positive and this one is negative, right? That would be as sensical as talking
you gotta
about.
get rid of the negative one.
Yeah, right. I should just chop it off, huh? Or at least bury it in my armpit or
right.
something.
Yeah. Well, this is something else that I think that life masters and emotional masters become aware of is most of the dichotomies that we have in our world are complete illusions. You talk about positive and negative. Well, we also have good and bad, right and wrong. We have all kinds of other dichotomies that we tend to use as means of separating ourselves from others. Whereas really, if you get right down to it, good and bad, both of those exist within me. Right and wrong, both of those exist within me, and they exist everywhere else too. And really, it's nothing more than my judgment about it. So if I can simply accept what is and let the judgment go, then suddenly the notion of positive and negative, right and wrong, good and bad, they just disappear. And I begin to see things as they are rather than I think they are.
And that's one of the characteristics of an emotional master, is that you become an observer. And well, actually there too, you become an actor and not a reactor, and you become an observer. And it's because you're able to stand back and see that this is a process that's going on. It's not personal, other than it's helping you to do something, but it's nobody's after you. And it's a puzzle. And you get to resolve the puzzle. And as soon as the puzzle is resolved, you can move on. Now, the sometimes challenging aspect of living a human life is that we keep on having puzzles till the day we die, right? There's no let up on it. But they become easier, so much easier. And especially it's easier because, I was looking at my book this morning, and I told a story in the book of an experience I had when I was out shopping one Saturday morning with my daughter. And when I got to my office, she went on to spend the weekend with somebody. When I got to my office, I realized that my wallet was no longer in my backpack. And I knew I had it because I had done a transaction in a store. I called the store, they hadn't seen it. So I figured somebody had gone into my backpack at a stoplight or something while I was waiting to cross the street and taken it out, right? And so my daughter went off for the weekend to visit with a friend of hers. And when she came back, she was sitting in the kitchen and she just kept looking at me and looking at me. And finally she said, "Did you find your wallet?" And I said, "No, not yet." And she said, "Why aren't you upset?" And I said, "Go look at the license on my car. It says EMOTBAL, for emotional balance. That's what I strive for, right?" And I said, "Furthermore, those people have already taken my wallet. And you know that emotions are energy. So if I get upset or angry, in addition, they're going to have my wallet and they're going to have me emotionally. And I don't want to give them that much."
That's great. Yeah.
Right?
That's a good story and a good lesson.
And so I kept on. Well, I was experimenting with manifestation. So I'll cut to the chase. The road crew 30 miles from where I had lost the wallet found it, had a business card in it. They called me. It turned out the man who called me lived 1 mile from my home, which was amazing. And he delivered it to me. And I got it back within 5 days.
Nice.
Yeah.
And was there anything missing from the wallet?
Yes, the credit cards and the driver's license and the money, those were gone. But my family pictures, my library card, my medical cards, everything else was there.
Yeah, and probably the things that you found most valuable anyway.
Yes, yes. And the others were replaced and I had reported them and so forth. But when we're talking about being emotionally masterful, it has to do with knowing that things are happening, that there are things for you to learn, and then focusing on the learning instead of allowing yourself to be carried away by your emotional reaction. Now, as you know, we can't get rid of emotions because they're part of us. But we can, most of us have them like this big, and we can reduce them down to this big in our life, right? And that's what I want to help people do. Just like I did with the wallet, I was not upset. I was focusing on imagining having my wallet. I was focusing on manifesting it. That was my learning at that time, and it worked. I passed my test.
Well, what you're talking about, I think, is learning how to express emotions. And I like this word express because what we express, we release into the universe. But what we repress, we get to keep for a long time. And the longer we keep it, the more painful it becomes.
That's because it grows.
Correct.
Right.
You got a choice. You can either express it now as it comes up, or you can repress it. So you've got those two choices. Which one do you think serves you better? That's the key question.
Absolutely. Absolutely. So with anger, then let me just go on a little bit more with anger. So anger is an emotion that is pointing out the bottom line for all of us is that anger is pointing out the places where we are rigid. For example, you're driving down the freeway and somebody cuts in front of you, a driver cuts in front of you. A lot of people get angry about that, right? Well, when we're doing anger, we're working with what I call shoulds. You should not do that, and it happens. You should do that, and it doesn't happen. That's when we get angry. It's when our shoulds get violated. So clearly on the freeway, I'm thinking, you should not cut in front of me. Well, I've asked people, what percentage of drivers cut in front of you on the freeway? It was interesting. Women talk about 35%. I talked with a man recently who said it was 95%, right? So it's different maybe by sex. But at any rate, there are a certain number of people who are going to do it. So this notion that they should not do it is crazy because a certain percentage should. What?
I think both of those numbers are grossly exaggerated. You know, when I think about, I've been cut off, but how often? When you say what percentage of drivers, it's a tiny, 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 tiny percent. Because it's really, when you think about it, how many people get cut off? How often? I might get cut off once a week or something, you know? And there are thousands upon thousands of drivers who are actually quite reasonable. So,
well, that may be true.
An exaggeration coming out of the place of anger.
That's possibly so, but actually it doesn't really matter what the percentage is.
Yeah.
What's important is that we realize that a certain percentage of drivers are going to cut you off, and if you insist that they should not do it, the only thing you're going to get from that is angry.
That's right. Yeah.
So if instead somebody cuts you off and you say, "Oh, you're part of the percent that's going to cut me off," right? You don't get angry, right? So that's our key, is that when we get angry, we're pointing out to ourselves our own rigidity, our own rigid ideas of how the world is supposed to be. And if you update that and change it, like, okay, a certain percentage are going to cut me off, you no longer get angry about it.
Right. Yeah.
Right.
So awareness is a big part of it, and recognizing that even when they do cut you off, they're probably not doing it to cut you off.
Oh, you mean take it personally?
Say, this guy's in some kind of a hurry. He needs to get across. He's maybe not paying as much attention as he should. Well, that's okay. I mean, I've done that.
Yeah. So my little phrase that I use when somebody does that is I go, I get it. You own the road.
Yeah.
So I just let them own the road. All right. So really, anger is a help to us. Now, anger will destroy a lot of important things about us if we hold on to it and don't work with it, right? There are 5 main ways that anger processes through us. It affects how we see things. It puffs our egos so that things do seem like they're done to us personally. It destroys our self-esteem, right? It can do mental damage, and it can lead to physical illness. So anger, I kind of look at it. I don't know if you ever watched cartoons way back when Disney would occasionally have one of their characters swallow a fly, right, or a bee. And the bee would get inside and it would be trying to get out, right? That's kind of the way anger operates. We have it inside of us and it's always looking for a way out.
Right.
And it finds our weak spots. So it can push us to get physically ill in our weak spots. It can push us, if our weak spot is our sense of self, it can destroy our self-esteem, etc., because it's constantly trying to get out. And if we just allow the movement, because emotions are energy, we allow the movement. Oh, anger's here. It's come to give me a message. Let me learn the message. Let me learn the lesson that I have here, and then let it go on.
Right.
You know?
Yeah. I think, though, what you're saying is Well, let me put it this way. Any emotion which is not allowed to pass through the body, I think, is going to be suppressed and repressed into the tissues of the body where it can toxify and
Right,
actually cause disease. And I
right,
think, I hate to say it, but even repressed joy can be harmful to you. You need to express. And
right.
the sooner you can express as the emotion is rising within you, express it in a safe and healthy way now before it gets out of hand. That's what I think is really, really important.
Hmm.
So, like you said earlier, you say I may be feeling some anger. Maybe it's time for me to speak up and say something. Well, yes, that's the time to do it. Before it gets to the point where when you speak, you're suddenly accusing everybody of doing something awful to you. When
Or
you
you're
first
screaming.
when that first discomfort shows up, you still have control. And you can say, I notice I'm feeling a little discomfort about this, and I would like
Hmm.
to talk about this a little bit. So if you don't
Hmm.
mind, I'm going to say a few things.
Hmm.
People are
Well,
generally very open to that.
well, that even is a lot of personal awareness, that statement. What I've often advised people to do is just get to the point of reporting. I'm feeling uncomfortable. I'm starting to get irritated. You don't have to do anything about it. You just say it out loud, and that releases part of the energy of the whole thing. And there's a very simple exercise that I absolutely love. I call it the I'm angry exercise. And you don't even have to know that you're angry. The idea is that when we face things directly, when we face them squarely, we get freed of them. So this is just a matter of closing your eyes, remembering a time when you got angry, especially one that's more recent, and then repeating in a cadence, I'm angry, I'm angry, I'm angry, I'm angry, I'm angry, and listen for anything that comes up in you as you're saying that. I'm angry that I have to repeat this exercise so many times in my life. I'm angry, I'm angry, I'm angry that it took me so long to deal with anger. You see what I'm saying? It just, whatever comes up, and you keep going until you run out of things. You just, okay. Well, if you check with yourself at the beginning and the end, you'll also, most of the time, you will find yourself relieved. You will feel lighter. In some cases, you will be even angrier. And that is an indicator that you've been sitting on anger and you have a pile of it inside of you. And in that case, you may want to talk with a coach or a therapist, or give yourself some safe way to get all of that angry feeling out of you.
Yeah, that's
Um, but for most people, it's a relief, and you can do that exercise with any emotion that you feel. I'm
yeah,
sad. I'm sad. I'm sad. I'm afraid. I'm afraid.
absolutely. And the thing that we're talking about here is the process of expression has to begin with awareness. And then once you have the awareness, you have to be willing to take responsibility for whatever it is you're feeling. Because it's not somebody else feeling it for you. It's not someone else who put the feeling into you. You have that feeling possibly as a reaction to something else, but it's still a feeling. It's still an emotion that's within you, and you have to take ownership of it. You have to recognize I am the one feeling this, not someone else. So
Mhm.
start with the awareness, get to that place of expressing, and then take ownership. And once you take ownership, now all of a sudden the responsibility that you may have placed on external things, outside of yourself, you can start to withdraw that and say, yeah, I can see how I was just putting that on you. You don't have to necessarily say it to another person, but you can say to yourself, I recognize how I was putting that out there when really that's my reaction. The
Right.
more you can do this, the more you become a master of your emotions.
Exactly. And, what helps is to recognize that the emotions that come up actually are being given to you. They're being paired so that you can learn. So it's not just it is a matter of taking responsibility, but it's also accepting that you're getting help, and that emotion is there to help you. I remembered this week I have had an experience that was interesting for how fast it went through. So I'm staying during COVID with my son, who's now 43 years old. He's a very smart man. He's very helpful and so forth. He has his own things, This is an intergenerational family. So I was having trouble with my computer. It was a very simple thing, but I couldn't figure it out. And I knew he could because he's a computer person. So I took my computer into him and I asked him, would you help me with this? He straightened it out in 2 seconds. And then he looked up something that we had talked about before, but he looked up something and started talking to me about another thing. And I said something to him. He snapped at me. I told him, I don't feel good when you talk to me that way. He handed me my computer and said, we're done, right? And that was our interaction. I came back to my room, and I wasn't in my room 3 minutes before I got what had just happened. When I was a kid, my dad was very smart. You take a simple math question, how much is 2 plus 3, to him, he would not tell you how much 2 plus 3 was. He would first talk you through the whole process, and then he would take an additional hour to tell you something that was connected to it, right? So what had actually happened was I was, in that time with my son, exposed to the irritation that was still in me about a man in my life trying to teach me something, taking more of my time than I really wanted to give to something. And it was just like that. And I saw it, and I was able to go back to my son and I said, thank you. That interaction we had today pointed out something. He didn't want to know what it was. It pointed out something to me about what I experienced with my dad, and I apologized for reacting so strongly. And he made a joke out of it, and we went on. I mean, there's an example of how quickly you can get through things, but it was a lesson, and it was just so right there,
And as you said before, remember, something that I need to work on is going to keep coming back to me until I finally get it. That's
right.
What life is like. This is this school that you're talking about.
Right. And so let's be clear that means that particular thing took 60 years to get back to me, but it still was there.
Yeah, and 60 years or 60 seconds, it really doesn't matter. It's not about judging how long it takes, because every single person has their own experience, and there may be a reason for you why it had to take 60 years.
Right.
Well, and so you can honor that and say, wow, look what I learned, and it only took me 60 years. Yeah, baby.
Well, it is kind of exciting. You're going, wow, that happened 60 years ago, and I just got finished with it. Thank goodness.
Isn't that great? Yeah.
Yeah.
But I know I've had the same issue in my own life. I mean, I have judged myself for taking so long to wake up to the truth about something in my life. And, I in one of my support groups, someone said exactly those words that I shared with you. How does it serve you to judge yourself for taking however long it takes you? It was a great question. And I love that question, by the way. How does it serve you to, and then finish the question, to believe such and such, to have this anger and hold on to it for so long? How does it serve you? If you can answer that question honestly, then you might come back and say, well, if I get to hold on to this anger, then I get to have the belief that Joe Blow is a real asshole. I get to keep that belief, and it justifies my belief in that.
Yep. Yeah.
And so how does that serve you? How does it serve you to consider that Joe Blow is an asshole? And all this, so you see what happens is you go deeper and deeper and deeper, and you get down to the truth. Yeah, I guess there's a part of me that's kind of an asshole, and I really don't want to look at that. I'd rather it by projecting it onto him, I don't have to look at my own inner asshole. Wow. Now we're getting somewhere. Do you see? And every single one of us has the opportunity to do that. And I think that's what you really mean when you talk about giant school, because that's really what it's all about, is getting down to the real truth of who we really are.
Absolutely, because that's what sets you free. So let me talk about a process that's connected to that. So often when I have worked with people as a therapist or even as a friend, somebody says, I'm having a problem and I want to understand this problem. As soon as I understand it, then I can change it. And I'm at the point now in my life where I say, you can do that if you want, but it's actually a waste of your time. Because when you're trying to understand the problem, you're focusing your attention on the problem.
Yeah, exactly.
And wherever you focus your attention, it gets bigger. Yep. So instead, how about focusing on what you might be like if you don't have the problem anymore, right? You start building a different you, focusing on what you want to become. And what happens is the problem atrophies and falls away. So part of my message is that we don't have to work as hard as we usually do if we also pay attention to where we focus our attention. Let's focus on where we're going, not where we've been or where we're stuck. We want to focus on where we're going.
That's a beautiful idea. I like that a lot. And I think I have shared something like that with people, but not in those words exactly. I love the way you describe it. It's whatever you focus your energy on is what's going to probably grow. So if you focus on the solution, well, guess what? The solution's going to grow. If you focus on the problem, well, the problem's going to grow, and it's going to become more irritating.
Right, and you don't
have a solution yet.
You don't have to know what the solution is either. That came up as you were saying that. I don't have to know what the solution is. The best way to do it is to imagine what I want to be like when the thing is solved.
I like that. Yeah, that's beautiful.
Right. So I really want to talk about where I'm going. And another comment I want to make is that a lot of times we work really hard. Oh, I have to bring up this anger. I have to do this, whatever. And as we've been talking, I think people can see that actually, like the thing with my son that I was talking about, that came up automatically. I didn't go looking for that over the 60 years. It came up automatically. There's some deep part of me that does it, or you could say it's God's fault. I don't know. But, some deep part of me that is constantly, once I accept that I'm in school and I'm going to be learning, it constantly brings up to me what I need to learn. And all I have to do is participate.
Yeah. And that's great. And, you mentioned this, it's God's fault or whatever. This is a great question again to think about. How does it serve me to imagine that anybody is at fault for this? Maybe it's just a gift from the universe. Maybe I can look at it as an opportunity for me to grow and expand into the fullness of who I'm supposed to be, rather than seeing it as somebody's fault. The moment I use words like fault and I start blaming and shaming, I know my ego mind is activated. When I can get out of my ego mind and down into my heart and stop letting that chatter run my life, I can begin to see things as opportunities, as gifts. But as long as I'm stuck up here, all they are is problems, they're challenges, they're horrible things that are coming my way. The universe is such a bad place. The world is such a bad blah, 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 blah. It's all bullshit, and it's all coming from the ego mind. So if you can be aware of that and say, oh yeah, my ego mind. This is why I find that question, how does that serve you, so well? Because I can ask that question of my ego mind. How does it serve you to believe that God is at fault? And then the ego mind will start talking to me as if it were a little child. So I have this little relationship with my ego mind, and that's how I quiet it down. Just by listening and hearing it and not judging what it's saying and, asking deeper questions, I can quiet the ego mind that way.
Well, you're just touching off all kinds of things in me. So let me let me go there. Um, in the book, the Wellness Universe Guide to Complete Self-Care, what we were asked to do, David, as you know, is to write a personal story and then to give a tool. And the tool that I offer is living from the inside out. Most people live from the outside in. This happened out here. Somebody did something and it's affected me. I need to talk to them and get them to change so I will be better.
Right.
And that's the long way around and isn't always effective. But if I move the locus to inside of me, this is something I experienced, this is a learning opportunity for me, then the only person I have to think about changing or working with is myself. What can I learn here? Where am I putting my focus? How can I deal with this emotion? What is this experience teaching me? And that's all we have to do. It's so much simpler. And so I wanted to make a comment about judgment. I grew up in a very judgmental, critical household. And so by the time I got to be an adult, I was really superb at self-criticism. And I was very aware of how much other people criticized me as well. And at some point, I had the grand opportunity to think about ending my own judgment of me and judgment, period. Just, okay, what if I did not make a judgment here? What if I just looked? What if I just observed? And I moved myself to not being judgmental. And because of this living from the inside out, now I have non-judgmental inside of me. So that is reflected like a mirror back to me from outside of me. And those other people who used to judge me all the time are no longer judging me, right? And I'm not judging them either.
That's amazing. You know what? And I would like to just point out that there's a very good chance that the whole thing was all in your head to begin with.
Oh, yeah.
Yeah. This is something that I noticed when I was in Toastmasters. I was I became a mentor for a lot of people, and I would have people say to me, I'm terrified of public speaking and this and that and the other thing. And I said, is that really true? I said, you don't seem to have any problem talking to me. You love talking about yourself. You love talking about the things you're interested in. So what is it that you're really afraid of? And eventually I'll get them to understand that what you're really afraid of has nothing to do with public speaking and everything to do with your belief about how other people are judging you while you are public speaking. And I said, now I want you to look at yourself for the next few days and watch how you react to other people who are standing up speaking, and tell me how many judgments you have about them. And they told me, well, I didn't really have any judgments. I mean, I was watching. It was a very enjoyable speech. I was, really connecting with their story. And I said, so do you suppose they might get the same experience when you are up there speaking? People would drop the fear of public speaking almost instantly once they understood that it was all coming from up here.
Yeah, and you're working with the ego. I have done professional speaking since 1984. And at one point, I was about to go to a conference in Chico, California. And I was just terrified to go on stage because it was a higher level event than I had done before. And somebody said, the sound of the words "I am" are the same as the ancient word for God. And so anything you put in a sentence with the words "I am" is
Right.
going to bring the energy of God. So I started playing around with it, and I came up with this: I am the minister of the message. I am not the message itself.
Correct.
Right? So it's like we put our ego in the middle saying, oh, I'm the message and they're going to say this about me. But the reality is you're just the person who agreed to do this right now.
Exactly.
Somebody else could do it too,
Right. But on some level, and I do believe this is true, on some level, each of us is the message, is a message.
Yes, I
And
agree with that.
and that gets manifested in a variety of different ways. We write poetry, we make songs, we cook special meals, we do all these things which are expressions of who we are. And so in a sense, we're just constantly messaging. But I get where you're coming from, and I agree with the sentiment of the point is that it's all right to be enamored of the message, but we shouldn't be thinking one way or the other about the messenger.
Right. We're just there to do a job.
That's right.
And we're doing the job because we agreed to it,
That's right.
you know.
Yeah.
And that gets us back to your issue about responsibility. One of the things that is characteristic of emotional masters is that they accept the responsibility that we all have for leading our lives, and all the people that come into it, the experiences we have. We are co-creators of that. And when we accept that and participate the way we've been talking about today, then we can co-create in the direction we want to go, instead of co-creating and letting a lot of the creation happen out of our awareness or out of our purview, you know.
Right. Mm-hmm. Well, I think as people have been listening to us, they've probably already, in their own, maybe in the unconscious, uncovered a lot of benefits of emotional mastery. But I wonder if you'd mind taking a minute or so just to summarize what you think the benefits of emotional mastery are.
Well, I would say that the benefits of emotional mastery are that your life changes forever to be a satisfying, calm, um, fulfilling, and exciting adventure. Because what you're doing is you're working with the way things are set up in the world. And it means it's kind of, I call this being an emotional master is like the difference between being a horse trainer and a horse whisperer. Okay, a horse trainer teaches a horse all the things that it needs to do whenever the rider tells it what to do, right? The horse whisperer brings the horse in so that the horse actually is part of the decision-making process. So a horse that's been trained, you put it several different riders on it, and the horse will forget its training, and you have to retrain it. A horse that's been taught to participate does not lose its training, right? And this is the way we are as an emotional master. We're not just going through, I listen to people talk about emotions. Well, I deal with anger every time it comes up. Well, how about dealing with anger so that it doesn't come up so much anymore? Right? That's what's happened in my life, or sadness or fear. I have another course I talk about on fearless living. I don't do fear anymore, and a lot of people I've worked with don't do fear. So my message, David, really is that becoming an emotional master leads you to be working in harmony, like a flow, like you're going down the river and you're not having to paddle upstream. And things start working out miraculously. It's amazing. You have no idea how much easier it is, how much more exciting. I don't have huge highs and lows anymore. But the excitement is a deep inner excitement that may not be seen by other people, but many people can feel it. They just go, oh, when you're around. So it's hard to describe in some ways, but it's absolutely life-changing in ways that just fill you up and nobody can take it away from you.
Right. That's beautiful. Well, we're definitely going to have you back on the show to talk about, the fear, not doing fear anymore. I think that, that's a great topic. We'll figure
I
out.
call it fearless living.
Fearless living. Yeah, we'll figure out how to get you back in on the schedule.
Okay.
And also love this notion of your metaphor of the horse whisperer versus the horse trainer. I think that's a beautiful visual for me to remember. And so I want to thank you, Ilene, for joining us today and being the emotion whisperer. It's been awesome having you here. Is there anything more you'd like to say before I close out?
Oh, I'd like people to start thinking about how can I make my life easier by utilizing the emotions that come up inside of me. And I will mention that in my book, I've got a list of 12 emotions and emotional states and their message that can help if people are interested in it. And there is an audio book also. But let's
So do you
live
have
lives.
can I just send people to your website to connect in with you
Yes,
on that book? And
yes.
what is it? What's the website?
Emotionalmasteryforlife.com.
All right, emotionalmasteryforlife.com.
Yes.
Well, that's awesome. Yeah. Well, thank
Yeah.
you so much, Ilene. It's been a real pleasure having you here again, and I'll look forward to the next time that we get together. Meanwhile, thank you all for being here and watching today's program, whether you watched live or whether you're watching the recording. But just a reminder that you can pick up and watch recordings of every one of my shows on my website at lifemasterytv.com. That's life-mastery-tv.com. I truly hope you enjoyed this presentation, and just to remind you that you'll get a feedback notice in email from Learn It Live here, probably within the next couple of hours, requesting if you'd like to give us some feedback or a review. I would love to get some feedback from you, just so I know that you're enjoying the shows, or if you have some suggestions about other things that we can do. And finally, I'd like to remind everybody to practice the life mastery mantra, which I share here every time I do an episode. It goes like this: I gratefully forgive the imperfect being I have been in the past. I gratefully accept the magnificent being I am right now. And I gratefully welcome the evolved being that I am becoming in each new moment. So until we meet again, I am David McLeod, your life mastery coach, wishing you love, light, and blessings on your continuing journey. We'll see you again next time on Life Mastery TV. Bye-bye.
Thank you.